Jamal had always been a bright kid. At just 16, he was one of the top students in his high school, excelling in math and science. His dream was to become an aerospace engineer, and he worked hard to make it happen. But no matter how hard he tried, there was one class that made him feel like he didn't belong: Mr. Thompson's history class. Mr. Thompson had been teaching at Lincoln High for over 20 years, and he made it clear who his favorite students were. The rich white kids got smiles, encouragement, and praise. But students like Jamal, they got side eyes, sarcasm, and dismissive comments. It started with little things. "You sure you're in the right class?" Thompson asked Jamal on the first day, raising an eyebrow as he scanned the class list. Jamal forced a smile. Yeah. Honors U.S. History." Thompson just chuckled under his breath. Interesting. Jamal brushed it off at first. Maybe the guy was just weird. But as the weeks passed, it got worse. Whenever Jamal raised his hand to answer a question, Thompson would either ignore him or cut him off. When he did call on him, it was usually to mock him. "Really, Jamal? That's your answer? Did you even read the chapter?" he'd say, shaking his head as the class laughed. And when Jamal turned in his first essay, an assignment he'd spent hours researching, Thompson handed it back with a big, fat C- scribbled in red ink. "This isn't college-level writing," he said, tossing the paper onto Jamal's desk like it was garbage. Jamal stared at the grade in disbelief. He had compared notes with his friend Ethan, a white kid in the same class. Ethan admitted he had rushed his essay the night before, and he got an A-. That's when Jamal knew. It wasn't about his work. It was about him. But the real humiliation came on a Monday morning when Thompson handed out a pop quiz. Jamal was confident. He had studied all weekend. But when he turned in his paper, Thompson barely glanced at it before shaking his head. "You know, Jamal," he said loud enough for the whole class to hear, "maybe you should focus on something else. History clearly isn't your strength. Ever consider, I don't know, sports?" A few kids snickered. Jamal felt his stomach tighten. He clenched his fists under the desk. He wanted to say something. He wanted to call him out, but what was the point? He knew how this would go. If he spoke up, he'd be labeled angry. If he went to the principal, it would be his word against Thompson's. So he just swallowed his pride and kept quiet. But what Jamal didn't know was that someone else had been paying attention. And soon, Mr. Thompson was about to be exposed in a way he never saw coming. Jamal kept his head down for the rest of the class, pretending not to hear the whispers and quiet snickers from his classmates. He wasn't the type to make a scene, but inside he was burning. Mr. Thompson had embarrassed him before, but this time it felt personal, suggesting he should stick to sports, as if he couldn't be intelligent, as if he didn't belong in an honors class. The final bell rang, and Jamal hurried out of the room, gripping his backpack strap so tightly his knuckles turned white. "Yo, man, you good?" Ethan caught up to him in the hallway. Jamal forced a shrug. "Yeah, whatever." Ethan frowned. "Dude, that was messed up. He's always on your case." Jamal exhaled sharply. "It is what it is." But Ethan wasn't convinced. "Nah, man, it's not. That guy's a straight-up racist, and I think it's time somebody does something about it." Jamal hesitated. It wasn't like he hadn't thought about going to the principal before, but Thompson was a well-respected teacher. Would anyone even believe him? "I don't know, man," Jamal muttered. "It's just words. Not like I got proof." Ethan suddenly smirked. "Maybe we should get some." Jamal narrowed his eyes. "What do you mean?" "Record him," Ethan said simply. "If he's really as bad as we think, we'll catch him in the act." Jamal thought about it. He knew Thompson was careful enough to disguise his racism as tough love or constructive criticism. But if they could catch him saying something undeniable, something that showed his true colors, it was risky. But Jamal was tired of staying quiet. So the next day, he walked into history class with a plan. Jamal sat in his usual seat, slipping his phone into his hoodie pocket with the voice recorder running. Ethan sat a few rows back, acting normal, but every now and then they'd exchange a knowing look. Class started, and for a while it was just the usual nonsense. Thompson rambling about history while throwing sarcastic remarks at students he didn't like. But then it happened. Thompson was discussing an upcoming test when he said, "Now, some of you might struggle with this material, and honestly, that's expected. Some people just aren't cut out for advanced subjects." His eyes flickered toward Jamal for half a second, long enough for everyone to notice. Jamal clenched his jaw, but stayed silent. He needed more. Then, as the class was ending, Jamal raised his hand. "Hey, Mr. Thompson, I had a question about the essay rubric. I noticed some people got higher grades than me, but I don't really see a big difference in our writing. Can you explain what I did wrong?" Thompson gave him a condescending smile. "Oh, Jamal, it's not about wrong. It's about expectations. You wouldn't expect a fish to climb a tree, would you?" A few students gasped. Ethan's eyes widened. He knew exactly what that meant. Jamal's stomach twisted, but he kept his face neutral. "Stay cool. Get it all on tape." "So, what are you saying?" Jamal asked, pretending to be confused. Thompson sighed dramatically, as if he was so tired of explaining things. "I'm saying some people are naturally gifted for certain things. You know, some are better at physical skills. Others excel in academics. It's just the way the world works." "Got him." Jamal's hands were sweating, but he stayed calm. The second the bell rang, he bolted out of the classroom and met up with Ethan. "Dude, we got him," Ethan whispered, eyes gleaming. And Jamal played back the recording, and there it was, clear as day. Thompson, implying that Jamal couldn't be as smart as the white students, saying he should focus on physical skills. It wasn't just rude, it wasn't just unfair, it was straight up racist. Now, all they had to do was make sure the whole school heard it. Jamal and Ethan didn't waste any time. They knew that exposing Mr. Thompson wouldn't be easy. He was a respected teacher, and people like him always had a way of talking their way out of trouble. But this time, they had something undeniable. Proof. That night, Ethan worked his magic. He cleaned up the audio, making sure Thompson's words were crystal clear. Then he uploaded it to a private link and sent it to a few trusted students, the ones who knew Jamal had been treated unfairly, but had never had proof to back it up. The next morning, the recording was everywhere. By the time Jamal walked into school, whispers followed him down the hall. Students huddled around phones, playing and replaying the clip. Even some teachers were talking about it, their expressions tense and unreadable. Jamal's stomach was in knots as he walked into first period, but then, "Hey, Jamal!" He turned to see Maya, one of the top students in the school, standing by his locker. She'd never really talked to him before. "I just wanted to say," she hesitated, then met his eyes. "That was messed up what Thompson said to you. I'm sorry you had to go through that, and I'm glad you exposed him." Jamal blinked in surprise. Thanks," Maya nodded firmly. People need to know the truth. Jamal barely had time to process that before his phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "Dude, principal's office? Now." Jamal's heart pounded as he and Ethan stepped into Principal Reynolds' office. Mr. Thompson was already there, arms crossed, looking furious. His face was red, and his jaw clenched so tightly it looked like he was about to snap a tooth in half. Principal Reynolds, a tall woman with sharp eyes, folded her hands on her desk. "Boys, have a seat." Jamal swallowed hard, but sat down. Ethan did the same. Reynolds took a slow breath. "I assume you know why you're here." Jamal nodded. "Yes, ma'am." She sighed, then pressed play on the recording. Thompson's voice filled the office, and Jamal watched as the principal's expression hardened. When it ended, there was silence. Thompson finally spoke, his voice dripping with fake innocence. "This is ridiculous. That was taken out of context. I was simply encouraging Jamal to focus on his strengths." Jamal clenched his fists. "No, sir, you were telling me I couldn't be smart because of the color of my skin," Ethan jumped in. "And it's not just Jamal. We've all seen how you treat students like him. It's a pattern." Principal Reynolds glanced between them, then turned to Thompson. "Is this true? Have you been treating students unfairly?" Thompson scoffed. "Of course not. I hold all my students to high standards. If some of them struggle, that's not my fault." Reynolds exhaled sharply. That's not what I asked. Thompson opened his mouth, but then shut it. She leaned forward. Mr. Thompson, this school has a zero-tolerance policy for discrimination, and after hearing this recording, I have no choice but to place you on administrative leave while we conduct a full investigation. Jamal's breath caught in his throat. It was happening. Thompson shot up from his chair. This is absurd! You're taking his word over mine? Reynolds' expression was stone cold. I'm taking your own words as evidence. Thompson's face turned an ugly shade of red, but he didn't argue. He knew he was cornered. The principal turned back to Jamal and Ethan. Thank you for bringing this to my attention. No student should ever feel like they don't belong here. Jamal felt a weight lift off his chest. Thank you, ma'am. As they walked out of the office, Ethan nudged him. Dude, we did it. Jamal let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. Yeah, we did. And for the first time in a long time, he felt seen. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more. Your support means the world.